Morning. Hey, how you doing? Get situated there. What is your favorite smell? I'm smelling it right now. My guess is that it's coffee, but I could be wrong. I don't even think you like
I
smells.
love the smell of coffee.
You've always been a little bit
I like
hard
the
of
smell of-
smelling. Not like I'm not making fun of you. Don't take that critically. But you've been you have scent problems. You like perfume, allergies, nose.
That doesn't make me hard of smelling.
It just
Maybe I have a very sensitive
like
nose.
if somebody doesn't
The
hear
delicate
properly.
nose.
I was not trying to classify you. I'm sorry.
No, it's true. Smells really greatly affect me.
But do coffee smells?
I love
What's
the
your
smell of coffee.
what's your most memorable?
Memorable?
Memor Why would it be memorable? Memory. Oh yeah. Memorable smell of coffee. I have one in particular. Do you? Like when you think about coffee, what's that scene that you think of like
Walking
your favorite?
Walking into a coffee shop, especially in the winter.
Any coffee shop?
Any coffee shop.
Just a coffee shop, you just love the smell. Kind of like a hockey rink when you open the door, you're like,
yes.
there's a certain smell of a hockey rink that I will never forget.
Yeah.
I have my memory. No, I get that. Every time you walk in a coffee shop is a highlight.
Especially in the winter.
How about Tim Hortons when they used to smoke cigarettes?
Ew.
Yeah. That's not a great coffee smell, although is it? The
No.
nicotine and the coffee. Remember eating the donuts? That 100% had nicotine in them. Do you remember that? I can still taste it. Dunkin' Donuts was probably the worst on Saint Laurent. No, Montreal. Ogilvy.
Well, good morning. We are glad that you have joined us this morning for our
morning meditation. No, I didn't tell you my scenario. My favorite situation of coffee, and it is well before I even had a coffee, was my grandma Kennedy. And she lived in London, Ontario, in a little house with an attic. Like there was rooms in the attic, and the roof was like this. And me and my brother would sleep there. And every morning she would percolate coffee.
You could smell it.
Yeah, and she had frozen strawberry jam all the time. Oh my goodness, we would just eat. And you know what she bought us? She would always buy us those little cereals that you had to cut. They're horrible. Why
you loved them?
I don't think I did.
It was like Christmas. I don't know. Every kid loved those.
They were definitely not enough. And I always cut through that wax paper. So it's like dribbling.
Yes. Yeah.
But that coffee, that percolator, whatever that was, it was see-through. Ever seen one of those? And it sat on her stove. And it is that a percolator?
Yeah.
Wow.
You have one in your kitchen.
Percolator?
Not see-through, but you have one, the little red one. All right.
That's an espresso maker. Do you want to let the mutt out?
Sure. Thanks for joining us. We're glad that you're here.
Cheers. Thanks for the coffee, by the way. Vicky is our new coffee maker in the house, which barista. Yeah, that's a new role that you've taken on. You made me one coffee, and I was like, this is one of the better coffees that I've ever had, and I'm usually the coffee maker, and now you're stuck making coffee.
I don't mind.
All right, here we go. June the 5th. Is school out yet?
No.
Okay. Not school time. Out. We alcoholics, we're not talking about you this time. We alcoholics are fortunate to be living in a day and age when there's such a thing as Alcoholics Anonymous. Before AA came into being, there was very little hope for the alcoholic. AA has a great rebuilder of human wreckage. It takes a man or woman whose personality problem expresses itself in alcoholism. Wow, I've never heard that. That is brilliant.
So true.
Who has a personality problem expresses itself in alcoholism and offers them a program which they are willing to accept, allows them not only to get sober, but to find a much better way of living. Have I found a better way of living? ? Our meditation. Very quietly, God speaks through your thoughts and feelings. Heed the divine voice of your conscience. Listen for this, and you will never be disappointed in the results of your life. Listen for this small, still voice, and your tired nerves will become rested. The divine voice comes to you as a strength as well as tenderness, as power as well as restfulness. Man's moral strength derives its effectiveness from the power that comes when we listen patiently for the still small voice. That's really good. I enjoy the fact that we have a personality problem solved by alcohol. Your personality problem is solved by my alcoholism. But what happens when we take the alcohol out of the ism? We're still left with a horrible personality. We're still left with the real problem. And so what we're talking about is that AA gave us, and it's all biblical roots, it's right out of the Bible. It gave us a way to connect to God through, I would say, a recipe. And so getting to see the things that block me from an experiential relationship with God is actually going to change my life. So there are good ways of living. I was thinking about this morning. Like, there's good ways of living, like healthy, physically, drinking coffee in the morning, taking vacations. Those are good ways of living, but they're introducing a better way.
A better way.
A better way. Have I found a better way of living? And that's being fueled by the Spirit of God. And so my experience and this recipe that we have through the 12 steps actually leads us into a relationship with God so that we can be powered by God. And I think that's the best way to live, because we get to be the children. We get directions. We get, comfort from outside of what we typically go to, that my horrible our personality actually gets changed. Do you believe that your personality has changed?
I have seen changes in my personality. I'm not the best mirror, but I've definitely seen, I can think of ways in which I'm different, whereas I would have said like, oh, that's just the way that I am.
Yeah.
And I actually think, like one specific one is like, oh, I don't like change. I just can't do change. But actually that was based in fear. And so I actually can do change.
Yeah.
And change isn't like an unwelcome thing, but
I can look back over the years, and like most of us can't see ourselves growing.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I can look back,
but I think you can ask.
I can look back and I can see the changes, even on going like family vacations and like how like dominant I was, and like I always had to drive. And then I got to the point like 3 years in, and I'm like, my dad like just gives me the car keys, and I'm like, I don't want to drive.
Yeah.
Somebody else. I just want to sit in the back seat and hang out.
I remember in very, very, very early recovery, one of the big changes that I saw in you.
Pulling over so you could pee on a trip.
Well, but also I was thinking of, we would eat at the table. We always ate at the table together. But even like with your family, like if your parents were there, you would inhale your food and disappear. Like you'd be gone. You'd be in the living room watching TV.
Because it was uncomfortable to sit with people doing
what
nothing.
What are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
And so I remember very, very early in recovery, you started sticking around at the table to talk about what you'd learned or what was going on, or being able to listen to other people.
Man, what a refinement. It's still happening. It's still happening. There's lots of changes still need to be made. And
so I think, what would be the takeaway there? The
takeaway is that there are good ways of living, and then there's the best way of living. The best way of living is actually being fueled by a relationship of God.
Yes.
And having a relationship with God to get a new life. Because I think sometimes we get sober, and that's God's grace, and then we start like rebuilding our lives. And I think what the best way is for God to, do you want to say hi, Mocha? The best way is for God to rebuild my life, to give me a new life.
Ridiculous dog.
There we go. We got a cat dog. Hi. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's close in prayer. Oh, don't drop the dog.
Scrambled. Okay.
I pray that I may listen for the still small voice of God. I pray that I may obey the leading of my conscience. That's a way to to live. That's the best way, that God is guiding and directing,
Mhm.
comforting, protecting, providing. And if you want more information, we have a program called LifeLab that takes you into a relationship with God. There's 12 steps. We do recovery meetings, all of that stuff. Reach out, connect, and know that you are not alone. Keep the peace, be of good behavior, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining.